our vision has been co-produced with our public members, and our public members have came up with this vision. The idea is to improve health equity and applied health research through the voice of the population. So you could see in the map here across a wide representation of our public members across the Northwest Coast. And we encourage our representation from across the Northwest Coast. And we have our public members who are involved within leadership, management and governance, and also within the whole journey or life of the research, where creating the idea, carrying out the research, analyzing the data and dissemination of our findings. So we ensure that our public members are involved across the whole journey of the work that we do. So to ensure that we do have the voice of the population, we thought about ensuring that we have the voices of seldom heard groups. And this is where this forum has came into about. So who are groups? They are referred to as underrepresented. Groups can vary. People can be from, people from disability background, ethnic minorities, refugees and asylum seekers, and homeless people. And this is just to give an example of a few. So often these groups are faced with multiple barriers affecting their engagement with health service research and inclusion in research as a whole. And these barriers are from a very organizational level, where the process of reaching and engaging such groups is challenging. We often call it challenging, or we call them hard to reach, and understand the lack of awareness and understanding of groups' needs, and most importantly, the absence of collaborative relationship across the different networks of seldom heard groups. So we have established this ARC Northwest Coast Seldom Heard Forum, and the idea is to create an environment where ideas and views and that reflect issues and needs expressed by seldom heard groups can be exchanged. And this is to go back into the concept about enhancing understanding, enhancing awareness, and enhancing collaboration across groups. So what we do in this group is that we bring together representatives of seldom heard groups. So it's not the idea about bringing researchers to talk about some of the research that they've done with seldom heard groups, but it's about really bringing those people who are working on the ground with these populations and actually highlighting and voicing the issues experienced by these groups, and sharing good practice. And most important of all is discussing how best we can enhance inclusion in applied health research and help us to actually understand how we can address some of these issues that are faced by these groups. So this is what the forum is about. So today's forum, so hopefully throughout these forums will be happening across a series of every 6 weeks. And we'll be talking about different topics every time. So today's session, we launched this session by focusing on ethnic minorities and mental health. We have huge evidence that highlights about mental health issues among ethnic minority groups are known to be associated with a range of disadvantages related to socioeconomic factors, such as living in areas of deprivation, poor education, and so on, just to give an example of a few. They also experience poor access to adequate mental health services, and most important of all, that ethnic minority groups are more likely to suffer in silence. These groups with mental health who suffer with mental health issues can often face stigma and barriers to expressing their needs within their own communities. So without further ado of this introduction, I would like to go to our first speaker, and I will stop sharing and allow my first speaker. And Ruth, if you can introduce our first speaker.
Okay, our first speaker is David, and it's David Garifaka. David is a scheme manager for the BME Community Development Service at SHAP Limited, and their main focus is to tackle inequality and discrimination in the way that health and social care services are delivered. They work collaboratively with relevant partners to improve access to mainstream health and social care services for members of the ethnic minority community in the Halton, Knowsley and St Helens local authority areas. This means drawing the attention of providers to the needs of the community, identifying and presenting barriers to access, as well as facilitating the platform for effective community engagement. So over to David, and I will try and pin him to the screen so he can talk to us now. Welcome, David.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Let me see if I can get my presentation out. I think it's there. Okay, I don't know what is it? Can people see that?
Yeah. Yes, we can see that, David. You got a message on your screen.
Am I still there?
Your presentation's disappeared, David. You might need to screen share it again and find it out.
Is it not there yet? Can you see the presentation at all?
No, not at the moment.
I tried it yesterday.
Your folder, which is so you must have shared the. If you can share your PowerPoint.
Let's try again. I actually lost that, isn't it?
You might feel easy to stop sharing it to start off with, and then reshare it.
Going on and off, actually, I don't understand this going on.
Shema, would it be easier to go to the next speaker and then bring David back in later?
Yeah, and David, are you okay, or can you stop sharing?
I'm just struggling to get this back on. I'll leave the list and then come back in again. I think maybe it would help. I'll leave the forum and then come back in a minute.
Okay, so if you stop sharing, and then perhaps we can.
Yep.
Yeah. I think
do you want me to bring Leila in instead?
David, are you happy for Leila to come in, or would you like some more time? Oh, he's probably has to go out and come back in. Okay, we can have Leila if that's okay.
Okay, so I'll introduce Leila to everybody. So Leila's would have been our second speaker. She's going to be our first now. Welcome, Leila. Leila's worked with diverse communities for 15 years. She joined the NHS in 2016 and is currently the Social Inclusion and Engagement Lead at Merseycare NHS Foundation Trust. Her role is to provide equality and inclusion to support the Step Forward psychology service across Liverpool. Leila's primary objective is to engage ethnic minority communities with a range of mental.
Sorry, Ruth, you've gone on mute.
No idea how that happened. Right. So do you want me to? I'll start. Do you want me to start again?
Don't worry, I'll do a quick overview of myself.
That might be easier. That's fine, Leila. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. So thank you, Ruth, for introducing me there. So my name's Leila Syed and I work for Merseycare and I'm based in the Life Rooms. Just a little bit of background about how I came into my post. I graduated from the University of Liverpool as an orthoptist, so I come from an allied health background. but I worked in orthoptics for not long, over a year, and then I moved into the language services, working as an interpreter, freelance for a number of years, and then I joined the NHS in 2016, and I started working for the social inclusion team as a link worker. So I've kind of been on, as I would, being a daughter of a news agent, I've worked on both sides of the counter, so I've seen the different kinds of, again, aspects of, you know, receiving care and giving care, and that's kind of shaped my where I am in my career today. So I work for the Life Rooms. I'm based in the Life Rooms in Walton, and that's our Life Rooms on the left there. It used to be a library. It's now an NHS service, and I'll go into a bit more detail. I'm aligned to a service called the Step Forward service, and I'll go into more detail about that in a moment. So to start off, the Life Rooms, it's an NHS non-clinical service, and its aim is to improve population health through the activation and system change. The aims of the Life Rooms social model of health is addressing kind of the social factors and the social determinants of health that really impact on a person's health and well-being. Things like, you know, housing and education, employment, social connections, and all which have a huge impact on one's health and well-being. And the way we do that through the 3-pillar model. The Life Room supports people to become activators in its own health through this model. It's a service that's been designed by the service users and by communities. So it's really in the heart of the community. And it also addresses the issues that are going on in the community. And it's also developed in a side-by-side way along with the partners that come to offer services within our Life Rooms. So the Life Rooms is not just a service that was just pitched up in a community. It was co-designed by the service users. So, and also, if anybody's ever been to the Life Rooms, it is an NHS service. However, it doesn't have that kind of clinical feel to it. It doesn't have the physical appearance of an NHS service. It really is a welcoming environment. So this is a 3-pillar model. The 3 pillars are learning, social prescribing, and also community. So it's a holistic approach that provides enhanced support to our members. We don't call them service users or patients. We call them our members. So the social prescribing element of our 3-pillar model is we work alongside 100 partners that are being quality assured. So we really do support the BCSE sector in that we collaborate with them to address really the social factors and the multifaceted kind of complex issues that people face in their day-to-day life. In terms of our learning, we offer a number of ranges like short courses and opportunities for people to access and upskill themselves to be able to, kind of navigate the complexities of life. And lastly, our community. And this is what is at the heart of the Life Rooms model: community cohesion, a sense of belonging where people can really come together and be who they are without, the fear of stigma. People can be happier and healthier within our services and access a range of opportunities that really enriches the life. So this is the ethos of our model that runs through everything we do at the Life Rooms in our service. We value everybody and their lived experience, which is so important because every person comes with a different lived experience, differences in cultural backgrounds and also identity. And so we really do value what matters to them. The learning opportunities are so important in that we co-create them with our service users or with our members. And we also promote hope. This is quite unique within the NHS because we empower people by reducing stigma, where people are met with positive attitudes around mental health. Because I think it's really important for people that access our services not to be defined by their mental health condition, and ultimately this improves their quality of life. So this The Liverpool Step Forward service is the service that I'm aligned to within my role. And the Step Forward service is an integrated mental health offer. It improves the pathway out of secondary care into primary care, and also bridges the gap between increasing access to psychological service treatment, and also community mental health. So people with like common mental health problems that have greater kind of complex needs that would typically be seen in the IAP services would kind of be more aligned to our service, because sometimes, you know, they're not really suitable, or the condition is not complex enough for community mental health teams which sit within secondary care. And this is further illustrated here in our model. So we sit in the middle, an overlap between secondary and primary care. So we're kind of bridging that gap, and people can kind of step up into secondary care or step down. So there's a better pathway, but also within the Step Forward service, we work closely with the voluntary sectors, which is, you know, other, you know, outside organisations that could better meet the needs of, you know, the practical issues that a person might need, or they can kind of access the, you know, the talking therapies, or also within the life rooms, it is the kind of vast resources of services and courses that people can access. So it really is an integrated approach to addressing the mental health needs of people. So here's just a quick overview of the Step Forward service. It really offers like nearly access to psychological therapies for those with emerging personality disorders, or with MSU, which stands for medically unexplained symptoms. Helps align the community mental health teams with the PCNs as part of an integrated pathway. And also with my role really is to increase links with BAME groups to improve their access with the community, the Step Forward's access with the community, and vice versa. The service is really based on mental health needs and not a particular diagnosis, because I think we need to move away from these kinds of pathways and processes where we just box people into neat boxes. And I think it's really important that people, you know, that, you know, health services recognise that there's different kinds of, you know, cultural backgrounds and different needs in this ever increasing complex environments that we're living in. And also integration with third sector, which is so important, because the VCSE sectors are really important in terms of kind of that collaborative and place-based approach. But also we work closely with like the specialised services in order to support them as well, and support people that move down from like kind of the secondary services into Step Forward. The advantages of the service is that we're able to provide like an earlier intervention, so people don't reach that crisis point. It's a better experience of the system, in that like it's much more streamlined, and patients are more supported to be in the right part of the system. There needs to be like, and we recognise there's a number of services that need to, you know, that need to be developed in order to meet the needs of people's different complexities. And also this leads to a reduction in healthcare utilisation, GP appointments and accidents and emergency, where people go to when they can't access, you know, the appropriate services to meet their needs. So my role within the life rooms and the Step Forward is social inclusion and engagement lead. So I kind of lead on the BAME engagement side of things. And in addressing the increased needs of BAME communities, we've also recruited an assistant psychologist specifically for BAME groups. So I'll be working alongside this assistant psychologist, who's not in post just yet. We also recognise that BAME communities also face challenges in access and racism and social and economic inequalities and stigma. So we're working to address those needs. BAME groups, we know that we're worse off in terms of outcomes and experience compared to the white population, but also mental health is also perceived differently by different population groups. So it's really important that kind of we kind of are able to kind of offer a unique service to meet the needs of the BAME communities. And I'm just going to give you a disclaimer. For the purpose of this 10-minute presentation, I do refer to BAME, but obviously, we know that BAME is not a homogenous term, that it does apply to a wide range of groups that don't have kind of the same needs. For instance, as an example, I work with the Gypsy and Roma traveller groups, who are totally different to kind of the Black African groups. So it's recognising, different groups have different needs. And these are some of the groups that the different services that we're able to offer, therapy groups that are specific for BAME service users. And also we all offer kinds of training to our staff within Merseycare on race and cultural issues, and also focus groups that are specific for BAME needs. So in addressing these, we're able to kind of look more further into how we can, the outcomes of our service in terms of equality and inclusion. And also community engagement to improve our services for BAME members. We will cope with the Life Rooms ethos is that we work side by side with our groups, and this will also apply to BAME members to address their needs and also be able to deliver services appropriate to their needs. And obviously this service has been, I think it was incepted in October 2020, so it's not been too long in operation. So as the service evolves, further plans and innovations will develop according to the needs of our population. Culture is a really important one for me in terms of kind of addressing the needs of our communities, especially in Liverpool, which is such a diverse population. In terms of culture, Leila Saunders was the first to observe cultural differences in medical care in 1954. I always emphasise when I deliver this slide is that it was 1954 and we're still talking about culture and how we need to adapt culture, our services to be culturally appropriate. And we're in 2021, which I find astonishing. I think it's really, really important for our services to kind of recognise that people have different lived experience, different perceptions as well of how they view their physical and mental health. And so this is something that we really work hard with the Step Forward psychologists, in that we kind of discuss openly. We use reflective practice as well within the Life Rooms and within our teams to kind of discuss different cultural contexts. And early access and intervention is so important if we are able to address culture within health, because BAME groups, we know from reports that they do tend to present late. And interventions are not kind of suited to for the minority. So for culture is really important in terms of health care access and services.
Leila, just cautious of time, so if you want to just wrap up, that's brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. So just quickly, I know Seamus going to has spoken about this health research, but from our point of view, we feel that a proactive approach is needed to reach these underrepresented groups, and we've done something really positive with Central Liverpool Primary Care, in that we were able to kind of reach into the community leaders who were able to reach to the community members. So seeking those people that are influential in communities is really important in reaching the underrepresented. Obviously, challenges manifest in understanding populations and health profiles, and we're not collecting the right data to reflect the diversity within populations. And also in terms of underrepresented, they are underrepresented for a reason. And this really does lead to power imbalances in terms of lack of participation. But I feel strongly that underrepresented groups are excluded. And the last slide is a quote I always use from the WHO, which is: the best medical care in the world remains limited if its provision does not align with the priorities and the perceived needs of those who it seeks to serve. It's really important that we kind of address the population of the communities in which we serve, that services are delivered for them and not the majority. So we really need to understand our population and our communities.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
much.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Quick stop.
Again, encourage everyone to please use the chat function and send questions if you have for Leila, and hopefully with the panel discussion we'll be able to address some of these as well. So David's back, and we would like to have David in Leila, if you can stop sharing your screen, David can start off.
Okay, let me see. Let me see what I can.
Hopefully some luck this time.
I hope this time is successful. Where is it now? Can we see it there now?
We still can. You've selected your folder to. If you actually can select the PowerPoint.
Just a minute. Well, let me get rid of this first of all. Yeah, I just want to get this now. Can you see the PowerPoint at all?
No, we only can see the shared folder that you have. So if you can just stop sharing. I was wondering whether you want to do without the presentation, David, or would you like to send it to one of us?
Yeah, I think let me see what I can do without the presentation, without the thing. Okay, I'm very sorry about that. I may have to send the presentation to you so that you are aware of it. As has been introduced, my name is David Garifaka. I'm the scheme manager for the Black, Asian, and Minority Ethnic Community Development Service, based in an organization called SHAP Limited, which actually works across 3 boroughs, St. Helens, Halton, and Knowsley. My presentation is going to be very much around identifying some of the barriers, because we are not, unlike the previous presenter, we do not actually deliver a service because we don't have the resources and skills to deliver a service. What we do is to facilitate a process whereby we try to engage with service providers, particularly in the health and social care sector, to make sure that their services, their mainstream services are by being in those areas. And my presentation is going to focus very much on the improving access or the barriers and challenges that are faced by BIM communities in areas where the BIM population is low, and that is St. Helens, Halton, and Knowsley. And I think sometimes we don't take those into consideration at all. And I want to focus my presentation in those areas so that we are aware of what are the barriers. And what do we do as an organization? We try to identify the barriers that individuals face when accessing services and bring those barriers, present those barriers to our CCG contacts, that is the clinical commissioning group contacts that we have to these various services, so that they are aware of those barriers. But we also look at the barriers from the perspective, because we look at barriers from the perspective of 2 areas. That is the community themselves, but also the service providers. And I just want to go quickly with the community, some of the barriers that the community face. And working in this area, we find that a lot of people actually live in isolated areas. They are very isolated. They are, if you look like people who are members of the BIM community who live there are actually isolated. Secondly, one of the things that they have is that they do not have the support system like city-based organizations have. For example, in Liverpool, we have a large BIM community, very well established over several years, but we do not have these in the areas I'm talking about. So as a result of that, that support system does not really exist. And people actually find themselves difficulty in engaging with that. The other thing that is found is a lot of our members or the client group do have difficulty accessing services because of the system. They're not familiar with the system. They're not familiar with the procedures. And for example, you find people wanting to go and having some illnesses, etc., that they go straight to A&E rather than going through the normal process. And what we try to do is to just make them aware of all of those things. Finally, and that is, I'm just speaking of this because of the time. Finally, is also a lot of our clients, the BEM community, when they go to services, when they're bold enough to access these services, find that the experience they have, that the experience of accessing those services are negative. And where that happens, it becomes very difficult for them to go back to those places. And we've had a number of situations where people have said, well, we've tried to ask for translation. Translation was arranged, but on the day of actually accessing the service, translation wasn't available there. Now, that actually makes people frustrated. And I know that those who are providing translation also are frustrated in some areas. But for the person who is receiving it, it becomes something that they interpret as the service does not actually care about their ailments. And these are some of the key things that I just wanted to present from the community basis, that they feel that there are certain things that are happening, but also we have to come back to what I think has been stated before. The cultural, language, value, and belief systems of members also create barriers for them. That's what I'm saying, that from the community's perspective, there are barriers that they feel. For example, the perception of mental illness. We have a number of situations where we have people with children who have issues, and they will not take them to the hospital because they believe that if they go there, they will be stigmatized and said, oh, this person is actually having illness. But from their point of view, the child is not actually, and religious and belief systems also have a way of preventing them from accessing some of the services themselves. So from the community's perspective, there are barriers. And what we try to do is to work with the community to say that, okay, these are barriers, overcome them by first of all, understanding the system, understanding the procedures, what you need to do, helping them with translation where that is not being provided by the service providers themselves. Now, coming to the service providers, and I think that's very important also, because the services themselves or the service providers I'm not making a general statement, because I think there has been some improvements, and I think there's been massive improvements in the three boroughs that we work with the CCGs. However, there still exists where I think because of the lack of knowledge, the lack of knowledge of the cultural makeup of the environment, people are not patient when they receive people from the BEM community. And I think they want to rush through. You go to a GP, and usually it's having a 10-minute session with a GP. But for the BEM individual, you have to arrange several things, and that lack of patience actually creates difficulties for individuals. And I think it's important that is acknowledged. Secondly, there is also the system of that. I think there is a lack of understanding of the BEM community needs and the systems that are already existing in these service providers areas, is that they are taking a longer time to adapt to the fact that there are BEM communities now living in their areas. And so the systems that already exist are not geared to helping the BEM communities address some of the needs, the barriers that they face. The other thing is about, and that is what I said earlier on with regards to the BEM community and the challenges, is that when it comes to consultation and comes to representation and where decisions are made, you find that BEM members are not represented on any of the key forums to so that their voice is heard. Unlike what happens in Liverpool, perhaps, unlike what happens in other parts of where the BIM community is large. So they are underrepresented, or in quite a number of cases, they are completely absent. And when agendas are set up and discussions are actually carried out, and when a BIM member is not present, you find BIM issues are not discussed at all. And that has happened in several cases. And we've drawn a number of organizations listen to the fact that as you are discussing this issue, have you looked at it from a BIM perspective? And the answer that sometimes comes is that the BIM population is very low. And that reference to the 2011 census data, which states that, for example, in Witness in Halton, maybe 1.8%, in St. Helens, 2% of the population is a BIM population. That is then used as a basis sometimes to say, well, perhaps we do not, we may need to look at that, or we may need to put that later on. And so that decisions that are made, strategies that are put together, policies that are put together are not taking into consideration the BIM community. And what actually sometimes happens is policies or actions are set, established long-term, and then later on people are looking at, okay, yes, I think there is a BIM community, and then it's like an attachment, it's an afterthought, in which case the systems are already in place, and that process is not taken into consideration.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'm just cautious of time, but I think that's a brilliant point to stop at, is that these, not being able, people from ethnic minorities are an add-on to policy making and decision making. So I think that's brilliant. So I'd like to just stop you there, David, because I'm just cautious of time, but hopefully we can pick that up in panel discussion, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's brilliant. Thank you so much. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, which is Simon. Ruth, if you want to give an overview.
Yeah. Hi, we're going to welcome our third speaker, who is Simon Torkington. Simon has been at the Advocacy Project, which is now Mary Seacole House, for over 10 years. And in that time, he's provided advocacy in the community and in psychiatric units in Liverpool, prior to and since the introduction of the IMHA service under the Mental Health Act of 2007. During his time in post, Simon has completed his LLB honours degree in law and a postgraduate legal practice course at Liverpool John Moores University, as well as a number of other training courses, including the IMHA Training and Award in Education and Training. And since joining the Advocacy Project as a development officer, Simon has had responsibility for the coordination of the peer advocacy training programme. He is committed to raising awareness of issues faced by people suffering mental ill health from a Black minority ethnic background and challenging inequalities in the services provided to them. So over to Simon, and thank you for your patience.
Absolutely fine. I don't need to say anything now. It's all been done. It's a bit of a long-winded introduction, wasn't it? I actually work for Mary Seacole House. And Mary Seacole House is a community resource centre, or however, I don't know how it's described now. Anyway, we have three sort of main services, which are the alphabetical order, not because priority for me is advocacy, but we do advocacy, which is truly independent, not like the statutory advocacy that's been taken hold of by legislation and limited. So we still do the independent advocacy, which means that we can do basically all services for anybody and advocate on their behalf if they have a mental health condition and they come from a BAME background predominantly. We don't turn anybody away, which is one of the aspects and features of Mary Seacole House, because we treat everybody as an individual, and when they come, they get a service that they want and require, usually on a practical basis, rather than just focusing on somebody's ethnicity and or mental health. So the advocacy service is community-based, and there are two sides to it. There's one that I run, which is funded by the local authority, and there's one that is funded by the CCG. I can send out, because I find it like quite funny when people say that I'm a nasty person because I put people's views forward and they don't like it because they're services and want to do what they want to do. But I could send everyone what it says about advocacy in terms of what the local authority expect from me. And that is to put the views forward of the people that I represent. And that includes all the diverse needs that somebody's got. And that goes through the organisation. So one of the things that we do with our services, which includes the day service, which is for people who need practical and emotional support, and our family service, which is not necessarily just for people who have mental health conditions, but it's for basically it's a BAME or BME or BRM or one of them, maybe POC, service for people who have general needs and for their families. My view of things is that we provide a service that is not it's focused on the individual, like I said. It's not focused on this community or that community. And I really do believe that one of the barriers that we have in terms of people and services is that we're identified as communities. I was saying to Shema, and I've said it to the Mersey Care Conference, and I've said it to lots of other people, that I've never heard of a white British community. When people are talking about all the different communities that there are, they never say, and we must access the white British community. And obviously, that's because there's perception is there's no barriers to that. And with the amount of, the majority of the country is white British, so the services are set up for that. So that leads us on to the services and their ability to deal with change. So, or different, sorry, not change, because there's legislation that's set under the Equality Act, which then draws out the equality duty on public services to provide services and have a way of working with people from a different ethnic background to start off with. Let's keep it at that in terms of not going into all the protected characteristics, because that's what we're talking about. But unfortunately, when that's rolled out, it might be all right for managers and it might be all right for directors and executives to talk about and say they understand and know that they've got to do something about it. But when it comes to the staff, and I know this from personal knowledge, there are things that people do. You start talking about communities and then you start maybe drifting into stereotypical ways of working with people. We need to go back and look at the individual and what they want and what their needs are. And part of what Leila said is 100%, and what David's saying 100%, and dealing with the difference. Some of the things that people look at the difference is too simplistic. No one drills down into things like the language barrier. David touched on it. The language barrier is not necessarily, you speak Urdu, so we'll tell you everything in your language, that's your first language. So what do they do when there's no way of translating a concept or a medical procedure? How's that done in terms of, because we've had examples of that where an interpreter's been there, doesn't have any understanding or knowledge of the mental health system, how it works and what would be the best way of explaining what would be done. My manager, Hannah, was at the meeting, was not able, or was not allowed, sorry, to express it in the terms that she understood because she works with the mental health. And we have a massive difficulty in that. People just arrange for interpreters to come, but those interpreters don't have any knowledge of what's being said. So they've got to explain it in a way that they think somebody's going to understand, which doesn't correlate with what the medical professionals are telling them. So we have massive difficulties with not just the language, but the interpretation and the understanding, and the fact that these concepts don't exist in a different ethnic background, culture, whatever. Love the word culture as well, because you know, when we go to hospital and we've got a mental health condition, we all want to start talking about the Tate and the Walker Art Gallery, because that's what culture means as well. And people don't really, it's automatic. It's just like, let's use that phrase. So there's lots of examples where, unfortunately, we get people who we refer to services that are mainstream services that come back because they say we couldn't deal with them because we couldn't speak to them. because we had a language barrier. So I always have a thing, because I don't deal with benefits. So anybody that comes to me, unless I really know them and the ins and outs, I will refer to the service, the CAB, for them to deal with. And then those people bounce back because the CAB said we couldn't find somebody to interpret, or they didn't understand, or we didn't understand them. So there's a massive difficulty in, it's not accessing services, because that's not a problem. The problem is when you get into services, once you're in there, they don't know what they're doing with you. And that stereotypical view comes out. And even to the point where I find it really bizarre that I've been an advocate for somebody and they've then started talking to them and saying, talking to me and saying, what can we do for that person? And I'm like, okay, what would you do if it was somebody else? What would you do if that person was white? You'd go and ask them, wouldn't you? So what's wrong with just asking somebody what they want? What they need to develop the skills of is fitting people into the system, but getting the system to come closer to their needs, not just saying, this is the system, you need to work within it. There's no movement, there's no flexibility. That needs to be there. How is it supposed to work when you just, and Leila, you must have experienced it, you work for Mersey Care. They are quite rigid in the way that they do things, unless somebody's there to push them to change. I'm talking about people from ethnic backgrounds who work within the NHS. Not Leila, not you, Leila. But that have been trained and shown how to work and are not allowed the flexibility to do it. There have been psychiatrists who can't understand the needs of somebody from a different culture when they've come from a different culture themselves. But that's sort of educated out of you. You're taught to do it in a Eurocentric way and not to do that thing where you can see that there is a difference, that somebody needs help. I don't understand the mental health anyway, because within mental health, you're supposed to look at the individual. It's not about looking at the community. It's about the person that comes and sits in front of you as a patient, and you talking to them and working out, first of all, what their belief system is, what their background is. Because if you don't know what their background is and their belief system, how can you make a judgment about whether they're right or whether they're wrong or whether their mental health is suffering? You can't, because you don't know.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what Mary C. Colehouse do. The reason we work, the reason we do well, is because we don't treat people as a mental health condition or an ethnicity. That's what we're there to do. But we are open-armed, accepting people to the point where if somebody comes to the office and knocks on the door, and I'm there and I've got time, and any member of staff's got isn't in the middle of another appointment or doing something, then they can come. That person can come in.
Yeah, brilliant.
And we
brilliant,
will deal
Simon.
with them one-to-one.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And
Sorry for mad rants, but
thank you so much. That's a brilliant end point, and definitely agree with the idea of looking at the person as an individual rather than specifically labeling someone based on ethnicity or their cultural background. So thank you so much, Simon. That's a brilliant talk. Please, I encourage everyone to, if you have any questions, please use the chat function. Hopefully we'll get more discussion to come in the panel. So, but without further ado, I'd like to introduce our wonderful public advisors, Nahid, Tahir and Faheen, to actually present their presentation. So Nahid, please feel free. Nahid, we can see the presentation. Faheen, would you like to start off? Can't hear.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Farheen Yameen. I'm from Pakistan and a mother of 3 children. Why I became a public advisor. In 2016, after the birth of my 3rd child, I went through postnatal depression. I had so many burdens like house chores and taking care of 2 young kids and a newborn baby girl, all without anyone's help. I was stuck at home and raising kids, doing all the house chores and taking care of 2 young boys and a newborn baby girl without anyone's help. I was stuck at home and raising kids. While on the school run, I discussed ways to get involved in any activities with one of the parents, and during discussion, she told me that she worked as a researcher in Clark and gave me some background of her work and that it could be beneficial for me to join research work as a public advisor. Initially, I thought that I would not be able to manage this as I never done any research work before. But later on, one of my friend, Nahid, who is public advisor and also my buddy, encouraged me to be a part of ARC. My first project as a public advisor was YAC, Youth Information Advice and Counseling. What I have learned as a public advisor. As this was my very first involvement, my perception regarding mental health equality was totally different. To me, mental issues is with people due to some trauma or injury to their brain who won't be able to develop on higher senses as normal people have. Mental health in ethnic community. Especially in my Asian community, I saw that people classify person only in this category if they have some serious mental health issues and mostly isolate them and up to some extent make fun of them instead of helping them. As a public advisor, I became a part of the project regarding young people mental health project called YPAS. Working closely with the team, I learned that young kids have mental health issues as well. As I said, I'm a mother of 3 kids, but I never think about mental health problems in young kids. The more I was involved in the project, the more I realized that ethnic communities' mental health is something that which people hide under the carpet, and nobody wants to talk about it. There is an element of fear that if they share their issues with other people, they make wrong impression about them, and they might be isolated within the community and won't be respected. I have seen that people avoid interacting with them, don't want to make friendship with them, which increase more problems. Awareness of mental health problem is at its peak, especially during COVID-19 pandemic. Ethnic communities are also victims of mental illness, and it is under-recognized in these communities. We must think differently to understand the deep down root causes to address this to their level. The biggest challenge for ethnic community is to overcome the language barrier and address fear, stigma, and lack of culturally sensitive treatment. Engagement at local community center will definitely increase the awareness and build better society where we all build progress together. Thank you.
Well done, Faheen, that was brilliant. Hi everyone, my name's Nahid. I'll speak first about being a public advisor. For me, being a public advisor for ARC, I believe it's given me a platform to be a voice for my community. I understand the diverse cultures, backgrounds and challenges that they face. And I also know firsthand the stigma attached to mental health, and talking about this subject through forums like this and collaborating with researchers is the first of many steps. The impact of the COVID pandemic has brought out the inequalities faced by ethnic minorities, but this has only been recognised because of the research being done and our voices being heard through public engagement. These voices have managed to make an impact and brought much needed services to the people. One example is the recent vaccination programme in L8. Many of those seldom heard groups would not have been able to access the COVID vaccine, and identifying the barriers has brought them to the forefront. It's important to address these and many other issues and have discussions to recognise how we can inform and shape research to make a positive contribution in society. For me, being involved in research, be it through questionnaires, focus groups, clinical trials or reviews, it's always helped me implement change back into my community. One such project that I did do was a systematic review of barriers in South Asian women's attendance for cancer screening. It became apparent to me during this study that there was a lack of knowledge of female cancers, and because of the stigma and barriers attached to this, women were not taking advantage of the screening when it was offered to them. Reaching out to communities and creating awareness from a trusted source meant I was able to implement change. Me being involved in this work has continued to build and cement that much needed trust. After I presented findings to research, I presented the findings of the research to women who otherwise would have been unapproachable, which in turn encouraged them to self-examine, get screened, and make them aware that if a particular cancer was caught early, there was a better chance of a survival. So one of the main reasons we're here today is to talk about mental health. I'm really passionate about my own mental well-being and creating awareness in ethnic minorities, but unfortunately there is a lack of support. It's still a taboo subject, and there is very little understanding that mental health is indeed a recognised medical condition. Our communities just think you are feeling sad, possibly crazy, or just craving attention. Friends desert you, and your family are sometimes so overwhelmed that they don't know how to help. I have PTSD, and a few years ago I had a relapse. I was unable to physically and mentally carry on with my duties or day-to-day responsibilities. At the beginning, as the triggers became apparent, the lack of support from the community and those I thought of as friends contributed to me becoming completely isolated. Fortunately, though, although they turned their backs on me, my family was fully aware of how to support and help me manage my symptoms. Their patience, guidance, and love led me to the right services, and because they understood and aware of the facts of mental health, they did not ignore my cry for help. Using our NHS services for me has been a positive. I'm not going to say that it was a bad experience, because it was very, very positive. With the assistance of my GP, attending Talk Liverpool and receiving therapy and one-to-one counselling with a specialist psychologist, I started to get better. Me accepting I needed help was one of the most important things, but it's a combination of holistic therapy, social prescribing, and most of all, speaking to my family that got me out of the hole that I was in. I think no one should ever feel afraid to talk about mental health. For me also, my physical well-being has always played a big part in my recovery. I feel as if I lose my body and don't look after it, I have no place to go but to my head. I become like a prisoner in my own mind. I think of my mind like water. If it's turbulent, if it's difficult for me to see, but if it's calm, everything becomes clear. Creative writing is also something that has helped me cope through lockdown. So I would like to finish on a poem I wrote, which sums up how I felt when I was at my worst. Am I visible to you? Can you see me? Hidden behind a mask, my true face cannot be seen. Endless courage is needed, unlimited strength is sought. How long can I last? I quietly scream, I silently cry. Am I visible to you? Who am I? Thank you. Over to you, Shema.
Thank you, Nahid, and thank you, Fahid. And I really appreciate you, both of you, sharing your personal experiences to really give us a true insight to how mental health is experienced with people from ethnic minority backgrounds. So I really appreciate that. So I would like to thank all our speakers. You've been wonderful and amazing. And I do apologize for the technical glitches. So now we are open for the panel discussion. I encourage the use of the chat. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask the question there. I would like to ask Selina or Ruth, who's been keeping an eye on the chat, if there's any particular question that has came up on the chat that we can highlight.
The one question that came up in the chat quite early on was to Leila, asking about how much involvement they had with the Roma community.
The Life Rooms has taken over the social inclusion team, which used to be under community services within Merseycare, and it originally Liverpool Community Health before we moved over to Merseycare. So we have 2 link workers who work with the Gypsy Roma and also the Irish Traveller, who were separate GRT groups. So so basically we've just started encompassing their services within the Life Room. So we do work closely with Granby Toxic Development Trust, who have really good links with the Gypsy Roma, but also we have a specific link worker who works with the Irish Travellers, who is linked with Vauxhall Health Centre, who she's been working with the Irish Travellers for over 20 years. So really, my view is that we need to be connecting with the people that are trusted to reach these communities. I mean, we can't go, I wouldn't go into the Irish Traveller community and go, hey, I want to set up a group that will really help with your mental health or whatever, because I'm not trusted. You know, so it's really important that we reach those people that are really trusted within these communities, and it doesn't matter what community kind of you're working with or you want to reach. It's the people that are trusted, because it'll take a long while or many years, I would suppose, and I don't think the NHS has the resources to start building those trusts with specific cultural or ethnic minority groups.
That's brilliant, Leila. And I think one question from my side, because we often use the excuse of hard to reach populations. I mean, this is a question that goes out to all our speakers. I mean, what could be some of your recommendations about how can we overcome this challenge of using the term hard to reach and actually doing something to reach the population?
Yeah, I mean, that term is kind of, there's been a lot of discussions, hasn't it, over, you know, since like, you know, the start of the pandemic about that term, hard to reach, because places blame on that community group. But they're not hard to reach, are they? We're just hard of hearing, because I think in terms of public services as a whole, not just the NHS, is that really is, as Simon said, they are kind of, you know, services that are built for the majority, and it all comes down to also to they are data driven, and you know, and a lot of the data is like what, I don't know who mentioned earlier, who said earlier that we're going on the census data from 2011. I think it was David who mentioned we're not collecting the data appropriately to kind of understand these communities in order to tailor the messages that we need to reach those specific communities. And another really good example of good messaging was the Princess Park outbreak. I think, I can't remember when it was during the pandemic, but they utilised community leaders, community champions, in order to kind of spread the message across to a number of kind of different communities within the L8, and those messages were really receptive.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Simon, David, anyone?
Yeah, do you know, on that, I know that the family service particularly had a lot to do with translating some of the information and disseminating it, to make sure people got it. And that is, like Leila said, that it's like the communication is a prime thing. And obviously, I think that as an advocate, because people aren't getting the message in the right way. I mean, I said to you, Shema, when Kelly went out and she was talking to some of the families and explaining about the idea of being more likely to get COVID-19 because you came from a BAME background. They didn't associate with BAME. They didn't know what anyone was talking about. So when it was in the news, there are people sitting there going like, I wonder who these BAME people are. And Kelly's saying, that's you. And they're saying it's not. But like Leila must have I don't know when or how or whether they have now. The Life Rooms provision has been in the north end of the city.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in the north end of the city, there are not a lot of people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds. We've been having that discussion. This is the thing that what I'm getting to is that statistically, that service is there. Leila's stuck up there, and they're saying that they provide something, but it's not actually being provided because no one's accessing it, because they won't go up there because they're fearful.
Simon, we have two sites now. We don't have a physical presence within central Liverpool, but we have two kind of satellites. We have South Liverpool, I think it's the Garston centre down there, but we also were operating out of the Playhouse. But the Playhouse wasn't really accessible. It was accessible to like the homeless and the sex workers, but you wouldn't have people coming in from, you know, the community in LA to come to the Playhouse, would you? I mean, this is where my role comes in, is enabling them to understand the community, to be able to deliver those services.
And you know what? That's one of the things that I know, working at Mary Seacole House. Merseycare have had the opportunity. We've had discussions with Michael Crilly, and in Liverpool 8 or even 6 and 7, there's no service being provided. And that's just, it doesn't make any sense. That
David would have an idea on this, because he works from within an area where people from ethnic background are considered as the minority. So David, do we want to comment in on that? If you can unmute yourself. You're still on mute, David. No, still on mute.
I've asked to unmute him. It's not coming up on mute.
Yeah.
There's a question for Simon here actually as well.
Yes,
Simon,
can you hear me now?
we can hear him now. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. I think there was something that a question that was asked quickly, because I need to answer that, because it says about hard to reach, etc., and communities. And my response to that is that I think it's a negative term. It's a term that is used as an excuse for not actually delivering the service that should be delivered to members of the community. They are not hard to reach. It's only that we're not actually making the effort, or organizations are not being proactive in setting up the systems that will enable them to reach those communities.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. Ruth?
Yeah, there was a question for Simon earlier on. Simon, as an advocate for people, do you use a PCA? I'm not sure what that abbreviation is. Do you use a PCA to ensure that they get the best service and their voice is heard?
I don't know. What's a PCA?
I don't know.
Selena, any questions on your side while we find out what PCA is?
There was a question for...
Oh, sorry, person-centered approach. I'll tell you, do you know what? Sorry, Selena, I didn't mean to cut across you. Everyone should be using that. As an advocate, I only do or get people's voice heard. So I can't do anything other than use a person-centered approach. I get to know the person, I get to know what they want. I get to discuss it with the person, and I get to give them the pros and cons from my experience, but do not advise anyone and do not make decisions for people. I do what they want me to do, no matter how, I want to be careful about the terminology that I use, no matter how stupid everybody else thinks it is and how counterproductive everyone else thinks it is, I will still put that person's view across, because after discussing it, that's what they want to say. Even if it comes out as a negative for them, it's their decision about what they say and how it's said. And I encourage actually people to speak for themselves rather than me speaking for them, because it's a lot better for the person to speak for themselves and actually have the feeling of power to be able to do that. So I then hopefully pass that on for them to do the next time and the next time and the next time, because they know what they're doing. And if it's a question of me sitting in a room and looking intimidating to the professionals, because I look over the top of my notes when I'm sitting there and they think, oh, he's writing something down about me now because I've said something, then that's all I'll do, even if I walk out with a blank piece of paper or the shopping list.
Yeah.
But it's about making the person feel that they're valued. And
yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Simon. I'm just cautious of time. Selena, one last question.
Well, there was a question to Leila asking about whether the Mersey Life Rooms uses culturally sensitive therapists.
The culturally sensitive therapists. It's a difficult one with culture, because culture is not static, is it? It's evolving. If we're talking about cultural backgrounds of people, so it's like what Simon was saying. It is a person-centered approach. So it's what matters to the person, and that's how we shape our kind of services or our treatment or our kind of plan around the person and what their needs are. And I think, that is the approach in terms of kind of, meeting the needs of individuals. It is personalised care. That's what personalised care is.
Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just ask each of the speakers to just have one final message in a sentence to say how we can enhance our engagement with ethnic minorities in addressing mental health needs? And briefly in a sentence.
So for me, I would say working collaboratively with community leaders and influencers to reach people that they need to reach to. Brilliant.
David?
I think for me is that because of the area that I work where the BIM community is very low, is to make sure that for organizations to make the effort to ensure that their voices are heard, and they have to be very proactive in doing that.
Brilliant. Simon?
At this stage, I would encourage the increase in more organisations providing services for people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds to help them through the general services, but to be there to support them with that journey. and for a better way of putting it, to not be too, well, it is, I suppose, aggressive, but to challenge the inappropriate practices and the oppressive practices that there are within the system that they don't actually even know they're doing. So it's about enlightenment, but we've got to go through stages to do it. Just quickly, the mental health fact review that I was involved with, I was told when I went down to the Department of Health and had the meetings there not to be too radical, because the government will book away from that and shut you down. I have told them not to have a colonialist approach when they put these suggestions of appropriate BAME services out there.
Yeah.
And not to do it because they're not evolved enough to.
Brilliant.
Anyway, sorry, ranty rant.
That's fine, Simon. Thank you so much. I'm just cautious at time. This is how it is with events like this. We just time just overruns. So thank you to all our speakers. You've been brilliant. So just before we come to the last quarter of our meeting today, is that we have something called the Padlet. I've shared the link on the side on the chat, and if you can all both here will kindly put us into groups, not really to go into a discussion, but really to just list down in a brief word or 2 words, just to list down, what you consider as seldom heard groups, what are some of the challenges that are faced, what are you anticipating from this forum that will benefit you, and hopefully if there's anything that we've discussed today that you would like us to continue talking on in the next sessions, please highlight. So Ruth, if you can split us up into groups, and if someone can just access the link
how many breakout rooms do you want to do, Shema?
So we've got 40
You've got 40.
Yeah, so we can break out into 10, so that's fine.
10 groups.
Yeah. Sorry.
10 groups or groups of 10?
Groups of 10, sorry, yes.
Okay. I just did it randomly, okay? Everybody will get an invite to join a room, so just click and select and join.
Hey Ruth, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Alan. I need to try and allocate you to a breakout room. They've just literally just gone in. I just assign you to anyone.
Because it just went silent. I couldn't hear a damn thing, so I had to go out and come back.
I'll just assign you to a room, okay?
Okie doke.
You've got room 6, I think. Have you got an invite to join a room yet, Alan?
Hi, Ruth.
Hi, welcome back, everybody.
Cameroon.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming back. It's I'm sure everyone's has got short with the discussion, so this session we'll probably try to make it longer so we can give us a space to have more of a discussion and further on. I would just like to bring ourselves to let me just share a screen so you can have the details. So thank you for everyone who has been part of this, the presenters, you've been wonderful, shared a lot of important information that I think in further sessions we need to do more. So I would like to highlight that the Seldom Heard Forum will continue, and we will be having a forum every 6 weeks. So I would be sending an email to everyone to say if you are happy for me to keep your email to update you whenever the forums are back on, and some of the topics that we'll be discussing. This is our contact details, myself and Selena Wallace. If you have any queries, please don't feel afraid to contact us and hopefully further discussion. And if you have any thoughts or ideas about a specific topic that you think is important for us to discuss within this Seldom Heard Forum, please do share it, because that would be very important for us to actually listen to what everyone else has to say and what they're considered as important to them. So I would like to say thank you for everyone. Thank you for coming, and hopefully we shall see you all in the next forum. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.